tuned in to The Andrew Lawton Show.
But in the vein of birth rates, we can't talk about Canada's population without talking about immigration, which has long been relied on as really the lone avenue for population growth in this country. We hear time and time again politicians say, well, birth rates are too low, we've got to boost our numbers through immigration. And as we've seen in the last couple of weeks in particular, Canada's immigration has led to an unsustainable path. We have the federal government itself even admitting that it has had far beyond, those were its words, far beyond what Canada is able to absorb in terms of temporary residents combined with new permanent residents. And to give you some context on this, government has committed to about 500,000 new permanent residents a year, but the number of new temporary residents a year is over 1 million, and that includes foreign students, temporary foreign workers, people that come in through other channels. So you have a large volume of people coming to Canada and a country that economically cannot sustain even those who are here already. So let's talk about this in context of what a Conservative government would do about it. I spoke about this with Pierre Poilievre in December, and he was hesitant to give a specific figure for what a Conservative government would advance. But he also did say there'd be a formula in place. And I wanted to delve into that a bit more detail with the Conservatives' immigration critic, Tom Kmiec. I'm speaking right now with the Conservative immigration critic, also Calgary MP, the MP for Calgary Shepherd, Tom Kmiec. Tom, always good to talk to you. Thanks for joining me.
Thanks, Andrew. Thanks for having me.
So obviously immigration has become a hot button issue in politics. What's been fascinating is how the Liberals have decided to do a complete about-face on what's really been their position for quite some time. How did you feel when you got that concession from Justin Trudeau within the last couple of weeks that Canada has actually bungled this, that Canada has actually admitted through temporary residency far more than what he said the country could absorb?
So, I mean, it's a bit ridiculous for the Prime Minister to claim that he suddenly discovered that things aren't going the way that he maybe thought that it was. He's the one that's been appointing all these immigration ministers. I guess he doesn't read any of the briefing notes or documents that come up his way. We found that out at the inquiry. He doesn't read national security documents. He's not reading immigration documents. It's obvious. And, you know, this is just a continuation because back in August, when he reshuffled his own cabinet, you had this bizarre situation where the previous immigration minister could not let go of his department, who was saying that things are a mess. That's a direct quote. And the new minister said things are out of control. And they've been fighting it out in public between the senior immigration minister and the junior immigration minister. And now the Prime Minister's weighed in and accused this government of basically failing on the job, that they're not competent, obviously, except he's the one that's appointed everybody. He's been in charge for almost 9 years now, and they broke the immigration system. And it's nice of him to recognize that he broke it.
Pierre Poilievre on my show and now elsewhere has talked about what his approach to immigration will be. He said that immigration should be tied to a couple of key indicators such as job availability, healthcare resources, and also I think in general, when you're looking at just the well-being of the country, those economic focal points have been where he's gone. Can you give any more clarity on what a Conservative immigration plan would look like in a platform or what you would like to do in a Conservative government on this?
So, I mean, what I'd love to do in the Conservative government is help the next immigration minister figure out what the formula should be. And right now it's, you know, broad terms, healthcare, housing, jobs, equals, that will be whatever it equals to. And then we'll have to create that, you know, very objective way of calculating how many people should be allowed to be in Canada, to be working here, studying here, reuniting with families, all of it together. And I think those are three very reasonable metrics to have. And what are the inputs into those metrics, like how exactly we'll look at closer to the election, we'll obviously give it to the public so they can, you know, make a determination. Do we have a better way of doing and managing our immigration system, or do they prefer the chaos and the brokenness that the Liberals have created over 8 years?
If that calculation leads to a permanent resident number that is lower than the target now, is that something that you would be willing to stand behind?
So it's going to be more than just permanent immigration. It's going to be also temporary resident immigration, because the problem isn't the permanent residency ones. Like, those PR numbers are often quoted by individuals in Canada. About 45 to 55% of those, depending on the year, actually people who are physically in Canada already. They're just changing their status from studying, from working here on a temporary foreign work permit, and they're becoming permanent residents of Canada, hopefully on their pathway to becoming citizens and, you know, joining the Canadian family. So half of those are already here. We're talking about everybody. It'll be an all-encompassing number, including everyone. So I don't want to limit it just to PRs.
But to be direct about that, do you think that number is going to have to be lower than what it is right now?
it'll be whatever it comes out to, that will be the number. If it's lower, it's lower. If it's higher, it's higher. But we see what the housing construction is looking like. The numbers going down in terms of the number of dwellings being completed per year. Healthcare services are stretched in some provinces, sometimes beyond the limit. That's what I heard in Vancouver when I was there a few weeks ago. That's what I hear in Toronto when I'm there. Like, we don't have a family doctor crisis in Calgary. There are actually signs saying family doctors accepting new patients. So this is my pitch to your listeners and viewers. Like, if you want a family doctor, no, Calgary's a beautiful place. It's the most beautiful city in Canada, that they can move and find a family doctor, but also jobs, job vacancy rates, job unemployment rates, in specific sectors of the economy are looking for more people than others, such as construction. All of that will be affected. There'll be a total number at the end, and that will be the final number.
Do you think that it's reasonable to restrict the immigration calculation to economic indicators? I know the previous Conservative government looked at values-based things, and certainly since October 7th, we've seen some examples of people where there is not a consensus on core beliefs. And I'm wondering how that would factor into your ideal scenario for immigration.
I'm always worried about introducing things like that are not fixed, like values, because that should be up to civic society to decide. Like, I don't want my government determining which values it supports, which doesn't. And the reason I don't like it is because for the last 9 years, that's the Liberal government of Canada. That's what they've been doing. They've been telling you if you ran, a school camp program and you thought that it should be based on like a Bible teachings, that you were a bad person, and they applied a values attestation test to whether you could receive a bit of taxpayer funds to hire a couple of camp counselors. And if you were running, like a resettlement program, they made you tell them, do you support certain values or not? So that's what I'm always worried about, is when you allow the government to determine which values it's going to promote, which it doesn't, then you get the Liberal Party of Canada doing what it's done for the past 9 years. So I believe like things like healthcare, housing, jobs, all Canadians can get behind that and be like, yeah, those are reasonable, objective metrics. There's no subjectivity to them. You either have those services or you don't, and there'll be a number, and we can then debate whether the inputs are correct or not. And then it's a debate about what are the inputs that should be going into it. You want more immigration, build more housing, get the policies into place to make housing cheaper so that people can get into more housing. You want more doctors, more healthcare services, well, make it easier for doctors to practice. We have over 20,000 internationally trained doctors who cannot practice their profession. In fact, there are less doctors practicing today than there were like 20, 30, 40 years ago as a percentage out of it, like per 1,000. And same thing for nurses. There's over, I think, 32,000 internationally trained nurses who can't practice the profession, the occupation that they love, because colleges are blocking them from doing so. So the country of origin lost a nurse. We didn't gain a nurse. We just have people who are disgruntled because they can't practice their profession, likely working a survival job.
Election currently scheduled for fall of 2025. If you had your way, when would you be going to the polls?
The same thing my constituents are saying immediately right now. Non-confidence, as many non-confidence votes as it takes to topple the government. Let's have an election, a carbon tax election, and let the Liberals defend raising the cost of living on everyone.
Tom Kmiec, thank you.
Thank you, Andrew.
Thanks for listening to The Andrew Lawton Show. Support the program by donating to True North at www.tnc.news.